Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Vidya Shala. So today in our class we are learning the revolt of 1857. So this particular session is going to be very important because of course in any of the competitive exams like UPSC or KPSC or any other state exams like FDA or SDA, this particular modern history plays a very important role, and in this series of modern history I'll be teaching you everything about the modern history from the revolt to the last Indian Independence Act, from where after which like we got Indian independence. I'll be covering each and everything about the modern history. So make sure you just go through every video. Like it's gonna be a class of 20, some 20 classes, that's it, and each classes may consist of some 20 to 30 slides, that's it, and I'll be helping you out how to read the modern history. And actually, to be frank, modern history is a very easy subject, but the thing is you should have an overview of a subject. For example, if you are reading about the revolt 1857, you should know what are its causes. Like it will have political causes, economic causes, military causes, and also social causes. So these are all the causes you should have in your mind. At the same time, along with the causes, you should know what was the consequence. Like the revolt happened, and you should know how it happened, and when it happened, and where it happened. And at the same time, you should know the consequences on the British India and the consequences on the Britishers as well as Indians. And you should know the impact, and at the same time you should know who are the military officers who suppressed this particular revolt and how it was suppressed. You should know everything about it. So it's called a 365-degree angle of reading it. So initially you should have an overview, like in a very smaller way. You should know what are the topics you should cover within the revolt, and then you have to learn about each and everything. And it's very easy. I'm here to help you. So don't skip the video at any point of time. If you find it, the video is a bit slow, you can just increase the speed. If you find the speed is very fast, you can just decrease the speed. So there you can, like, it's in your hand, like, but I'm here to teach you, but the learning is in your hand. Make sure you're not skipping it, and it will also be a kind of revision for the people who are preparing for UPSC prelims, and and also for the KPSC prelims. And it's gonna be a kind of lessons for you people who are just actually starting your preparation. So make sure you are noting it down, the important points, and I'll be here to make you understand all the concepts regarding the modern history. So let's start the very first series, that is the revolt of 1857. Okay, let's start it. Okay, let's see the revolt of 1857. If we just look at it, it's actually a revolt. Revolt means it's a point where people just they actually raise their voice against a particular government or the particular community or the people. So that is called as revolt. So in 1857 this revolt had happened, and many of the analysts or economists they have mentioned this particular event as India's first independence struggle. So this it was they just assumed that it was the first national movement of India, because it was the intensity of the movement was that much high. So the many analysts will judge it in a very very different aspects. So let's learn why this revolt happened, what was the causes for this particular revolt to happen, why the people were against the British, why there was such a big movement back then in 1857. Let's know everything about it. Let's jump into the this one video. So here, let's see, I first see the political causes. What were the political causes? If we just look into it, the discontent among the ruling chiefs. Okay, ruling chiefs and the royal families. Royal families means in the olden days, the royal families like kings and queens, they used to rule the provinces or the states. So those people were just initially they were just not happy with the Britishers, and they were just broken pledges and oaths resulted in the loss of political prestige for some, while policies such as policies of the subsidiary alliances, this is very important, the policy of subsidiary alliances and doctrine of lapse caused the alarm and suspicion mind of the others. That means British brought two policies, that is, one is subsidiary alliances and doctrine of lapse. Do you know what is this means? So subsidiary alliances means the British will give the alliances or the British will give the, what I can say, it will just give the alliances or the extra military power to the Indian rulers or the kings, and the kings have to give the money in return to them. Okay, so that is what the British brought the policy to India, but the thing is, it was a burden for many of the kings. Like, see, king has to maintain the military, and the military will be provided by the British, and king cannot maintain his own military, and he has to give the money, funds, foods. He has to give every expenditure. Like for every thing that the Britishers provide to them, so it was a burden for them. Another one is doctrine of lapse. What is this doctrine of lapse? Doctrine of lapse means like those kings or queens who do not have their own kids or the children, they cannot, take the children of others. They means once again. So here the thing was like the kings and the queens who used to adopt the kids, and those adopted kids were not allowed to access the assets of the kings and queens. This was doctrine of lapse. That means the kings and the queens, they can give their assets or the rule to the kids which are their own kids. Like if they and they are not allowed to give the rule or the assets to the kids which are just adopted. So that was the doctrine of lapse, and these particular policies actually caused alarm and suspicion in the minds of the others. So the collapse of there was also a collapse of rulers was another reason. That means the erstwhile aristocracy also adversely affected those sections of the Indian society which derived their sustenance from the cultural and religious pursuit. Okay, and then what happened is was like, and then the alien rule of the British, the practice of absentee sovereignty-ship embittered the Indian against the British. So all these causes, all these points for the causes for the revolt of 1857, and again the anti-British feeling were particularly strong in those regions like Burma, and then Odisha, as well as in Assam, as well as in Coorg and Sindh and Punjab, which were unjustly annexed to the British Empire. So already there was just a feeling of anti-British among these particular people in particular areas, and this also just fueled this. Revolt, okay, and the abolition of legal rights, okay. Now, and some of the legal rights were abolished, like the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah too had grown old and weak, and actually the Bahadur Shah, if we just look at the Mughal emperor who was there in that particular time, he was just very old and he was just weak. And the Lord Dalhousie recognized the succession of Mughal prince Fakiruddin, and but he was not in favor of the retaining an imperium in the emperor and imposed strict conditions on him. So Dalhousie also actually just imposed a very strict conditions on the Mughal emperor, or the legal rights were just, legal rights were restricted, and this also fueled the causes to, cause the revolt of 1857. And at the same time, in 1856, Fakiruddin died, and Lord Canning declared that the prince next in succession would have to renounce the legal rights and the ancestral Mughal places. So the Fakiruddin who was just appointed, he also died in 1856. Then what happened means the succession of the the Lord Canning who was just there, he declared the prince who comes in the next to renounce all his legal rights and ancestral Mughal places. So this also fueled the Indian people who used to respect a lot, who used to respect the Mughal emperor a lot. And in addition to that, the British also abolished the legal rights of the Nawabs of Carnatic and Tanjore. They not only abolished the legal rights of the Mughal emperor, but also the Nawabs of Carnatic and Tanjore. As a result, that also fueled the cause. And at the same time, if we look into the economic causes which actually just fueled this revolt, was the exploitative land revenues settlement introduced by the British. Of course, British, they just came with a very exploitative land revenues. That means they used to take very high land revenues from the farmers. As a result, the farmers were very much frustrated about the Britishers. It was very exploitative, like land settlement system or the land revenue settlement, which was introduced by the British. So the huge drain of wealth, and that means they used to drain a lot of wealth from the India, and the destructions of its industry. They actually destroyed our industry, indigenous industries, and increasing the land revenue. And they increased the land revenue, that means through introduction of permanent or Tuwadi or the Mahalwari settlement systems. And this had become the common features of the latter half of the 18th century, like after the 1850, like, and this was a very common feature everywhere. Like they used to drain the wealth from India, and they used to impose very exploitative land revenues on Indian farmers, and our Indian indigenous industries were destroyed. And they used to take the raw materials from our country, and they used to bring the ready-made materials, and they dumped their ready-made goods in India, and India became a very good market for their finished goods, and very good exporter of the raw materials. And this literally destroyed the art Indian industry. And the East Indian Company, after attaining political power, used it to fund the growth of the British trade and commerce at the cost of Indians. That means when the East Indian Company started getting the political power, they started, fund the growth of the British trade. Like they started funding their own trade and commerce at the cost of Indians. So this was their economic exploitativeness, and that actually made people to aware of their present situation, and they started revolting. So at the same time, a new plantation, like for example, a new plantation system introduced in the year 1833, and it resulted in the incalculable misery for the Indian peasants. So there was a new plantation system, that means indigo plantation system. So all this kind of plantation system was introduced. As a result, the Indian peasants were incalculably misery, because it was such exploitative in nature. And this was the result of permitting Englishmen to acquire the land plantations in India. So the hard hit were the peasants on the indigo plantations in Bengal and Bihar. So most affected people were the people from Bengal and Bihar, because there what the Teen Kartiya system was introduced. That means the people in their land, they have to compulsorily grow the indigo at least 3 parts out of 20 in their land. Okay, 3 by 20th part, they have to compulsorily grow the indigo. As a result, they used to get a very less money for their plants, for their crop. As a result, what used to happen, and the farmers were completely suppressed by their new policies like Teen Katiya system and their revenue system. At the same time, sometimes zamindars and the traditional landed aristocracy often saw their land rights forfeited by the administration. Even the zamindars were felt forfeited because of the land rights and the new rules that the British had come up with. So this resulted in the loss of status for them in the villages. Even the zamindars lost their status or the respect in the villages because of the land rules of the British. So this dispossessed Talukdar seized the opportunity presented by the Sepoy revolt, particularly in Awadh. So as a result, in Awadh, this whatever the revolt that was represented by the Sepoy, which was actually, it was used by these kind of people like zamindars or the villagers in the Awadh, and they started revolting against the British by using this particular Sepoy revolt as an opportunity. Okay, and if you see the even more reasons like destruction of Indian trade and handcraft and industry. Of course, India was very much self-sufficient with its trade. We used to trade with Persia and other nearby countries, and we were very good with our indigenous crafts and handcrafts. There's high value for the handmade goods from India, and we had our own industry. But after the arrival of the Britishers, all these, all these like trade, handicrafts industry, everything was destroyed because of the very exploitative British Indian trade. Okay, and there was high tariff in the Britain against Indian goods. So, and they also imposed very high tariff. Tariff means it's a tax. So they introduced high tax on the Indian goods. As a result, when Indian goods reaches the British or the Britain, what used to happen means they used to impose high tax. As a result, the British used to British people or the Britain people, they used to not purchase our goods by seeing the purchase, because by seeing the rates, because our Indian goods were very high cost. As a result, our the demand for the Indian goods decreased, and it damaged the Indian trade. So Indian trade was completely damaged, and the manufacturer was just completely affected by these particular policies. And British also encouraged the import of the British goods to India, and they encouraged the import of the British goods. As a result, they used to take the raw materials from the India, and they used to import the finished goods from the Britain to India. As a result, what used to happen? All Indians used to buy the cheap and finished goods of British. As a result, the demand for the British goods was increased, and their trade used to increase. So this was their actual ideology of just exploiting the Indian trade and improving their own Britain trade. Okay, so in India, the ruin of the millions of artisans and the craftsmen was not accompanied by any alternative growth of new industrial forms. So as a result, of course, artisans were ruined and handicrafts were ruined, but there was no other industries coming up. Okay, and this led to the underdevelopment of the Indian growth. Okay, this led to the underdevelopment. Okay, and the annexation of the Indian states by the company cut off their major source of patronage. So all these were the causes which actually fueled up the revolt actually, and the moneylenders and even the traders emerged as the new landlords. Like whoever the money lenders used to lend the money to the people, and the traders who used to trade, they actually started emerging as a landlord. They started becoming a landlord because of the gains in the money, and it compelled by this new form of revenue settlement, the peasants resorted to loans from the money lenders and traders at at the usurious rates, and later often evicted the farmer on non-payment of the debt. Like then what happened there means, because of the new form of a revenue settlement, of course, the farmers had to pay high revenue to the landlords. As a result, they started lending taking the money from the money lenders at a higher rate of interest. They started taking the money from the money lenders, and then they used to cultivate, but their particular crop had a very less rate. As a result, they used to fall in the debt, and that is called as debt trap. And they used to caught themselves in the trap, and as a result, because of their non-payment, they were unable to pay the debt back. As a result, they used to evict the land, and later, in order to pay the debt reduced, they used to evict their own land and give the land to the money lenders. This was the exact scenario back in 1857, and the reunification of the Indian industry increased the pressure on the agriculture and the land. So all these were the reasons which actually just fueled up the revolt in 1857. And if we just look at the social causes, what were the social causes which actually caused this 1857? If you just look at it, the reason is like the arrogant attitude of the British and the racial discrimination. Of course, if you just look at back, the British were very arrogant. They were just never sweet to Indians, and there was this lots of racial discrimination they used to do, and the racial overtones and they had a very superiority complex, which characterized by indiscrimination and assaults on the Indians by Englishmen, and it became very quite common. Like the British means they used to look at Indians as the laborers. Okay, and all these were the social causes, and at the same time, British the British interference in religious and cultural matters. They started interfering in the religious matters, cultural matters of our own people. They started converting Hindus to Christians, and they started modulating different. They started bringing their own rules and regulations to the Indian customs and their religions. So at the same time, a general alarm was raised among the Hindus and Muslims by the activities of the Christian missionaries. So in the Charter Act of 1813, made Christian missionaries to convert Hindus to Christians. So all these were against the Hindus. So all these people were aware. It was kind of alarm for them to awake, like to raise their voice against their exploitative nature. So the educational institution established by the missionaries inculcated the Western education. Even the whatever the education system that the Christian missionaries brought, it only had English education, that is Western education and Western culture in the place of the Oriental learning. There was just no Oriental or indigenous learning that was happening. Completely Western education was taught. So as a result, the Indian Hindus were, or the Muslims were, actually felt very bad. And at the same time, legislations were passed regarding the prohibition of female infanticide and the sati system and slavery, and passing of the legislation of regarding widow remarriage. Like there was also law was passed to stop the to stop the female infanticide, and to just they promoted the widow remarriage and sati system. They prohibited sati system and slavery system. So all these were against the belief of in Hindus. So the Hindus felt that they're actually striking an arrow at the heart of Hindus. So it was very intolerable legislation for all the Orthodox Hindu people, and they just raised their voice against it. And at the same time, in 1850, the Religious Disability Act was passed, which modified the certain Hindu customs. See, they passed Religious Disability Act, and it actually modified certain Hindu customs. So it would be definitely a hurtful situation for the Hindu people. For example, it started that a change of a religion would not debar a son from inheriting the property of his father. See, if a person is changing his caste, and the British government says that he can he can inherit his property from the father. See, how does an Hindu person would feel? Like son has gone out of his caste, then why does the son need his property if he has gone out of his own religion? But the British government says that the change in the religion would not debar a son from inheriting the property of his father. So this was completely against Hindus' belief. So that made the people go really mad at British people. And if we just see the military causes as well, in military there was this low salary and poor prospects of promotion. Of course, the salary for the Indian soldiers was very less. At the same time, Indian soldiers were not selected for the promotion. Only the British people were just selected for the promotion to the higher level. So that was a very biggest reason for the Sepoy to revolt. At the same time, it was piled up through another reasons, like alongside the conditions of the services in the company's army, and the cantonment increasingly came into conflict with the religious belief and prejudice of the sepoys. Whatever the conditions within the military were against the beliefs of the sepoys. Okay, like the restrictions on wearing the caste or the sectarian marks, and secret rumors and of proselytizing activities of chaplains often maintained on the company's expenses were interpreted by Indian sepoy, who were generally conservative by nature, as interference in their religious affairs. So the sepoy or the soldiers were themselves felt that their religious affairs, their religious things are being interfered by the Britishers. Like they were not allowed to wear their caste, like they wearing their own religious type of things, and all these were the cause for this revolt. At the same time, to the religious Hindu of the time, crossing the seas meant the loss of caste. Like for example, if any of the Hindu soldier or any of the Hindu people, if he just cross the sea, it means that in their customs it means the loss of caste. That means he has lost his caste. So it is like against their belief. But what the British used to do, they purposefully used to send the British or the Hindu army out of the country. They used to post the Indian Hindu sepoy to the other countries so that their beliefs will be ruined. So all these things actually just made sepoys very much hurtful. At the same time, in 1856, the Lord Canning's government passed a General Service Enlistment Act. This is very important. The General Service Enlistment Act, which decreed that all the future recruits to the Bengal army would have to give an undertaking to to serve anywhere their services might be required by the government. So according to the General Service Enlistment Act, which was brought by Lord Canning, it says that any of the person who actually joins the Bengal Army in the future recruitments, they have to compulsorily go to, they should be ready to go anywhere like any country to serve the British government. It was their role, okay, and it was really like already they have Indian Hindus or the Sepoys have this particular belief. So if they just go like the initial rule itself says like this, means it was really unbearable for the Hindus. And at the same time, the Vellore mutiny in 1806, there was a mutiny called as Vellore mutiny, a precursor to the 1857 Great Revolt. So this acted as a precursor, and it was the outcome of such tendencies on the part of the military authorities, because the military authorities were very rude to Indian boys, and they were just you know like deliberately they were just hurting the Indian beliefs. So all this became a cause for the 1857 revolt. And at the same time, if you just see in the military, the Indian sepoy was equally unhappy with his emoluments compared to the British counterparts. Of course, if we just compare the emoluments with the British sepoy, it was if we just compare the emoluments of the Indian sepoy with the British sepoy, the emoluments or the promotions were completely or very less, and every good thing for the promotions or the emoluments were given much higher to the British people. And at the same time, a more immediate cause of the sepoy dissatisfaction was the order that they would not be given the foreign service allowances, that is bhatta, when serving in Sindh or Punjab. Like even the Indian people were not given the bhatta. Bhatta means when they just serve in the other countries, they used to give some tip, that is called as bhatta. That is foreign service allowances. That means it is an allowances given for servicing in the foreign countries. That is like Sindh or Punjab. But the foreign, like British sepoys, were given that kind of allowances. But Indian or the Hindu sepoys or the Indian sepoys were not given such kind of allowances or bhatta. So this was also made them very unhappy about it, and they just saw the discrimination on their through their eyes, like in front of their eyes, they saw all this discrimination. And at the same time, the Indian sepoy was made to feel a subordinate at every step. Like they were just not given the higher position; they were made subordinate at every step, and was discriminated against racially and in matters of promotion of privileges. Everywhere they were just given a subordinate position, and they weren't given proper positions or the priority in any stages of their services. So at the same time, the sepoy in fact was a peasant in uniform. Like we can just say, like they were just sepoy were just not seen as a sepoy or soldiers. He was not being treated dignifyingly, and he was just a peasant in a uniform. He was treated like that, and whose consciousness was not divorced from that of the rural population. And in 1854, the Post Office Act came. In 1854, the Post Office Act was passed, which withdrew the free postage privilege of the sepoy. So usually sepoy used to get the free postage privileges, like they can just post the the letters or anything freely. But according to the Post Office Act, which brought in 1854, it took off their privilege as well. So that made them even more unhappy. And at the same time, in 1806, at Vellore, as I said, there was a Vellore mutiny, and the turban was replaced by leather. See, they used to wear the turban, and it was replaced by the leather corkage. This caused the sepoys to rise in mutiny. Okay, like turban is their ethnicity, like it actually symbolizes their religion and their belief system. But if they just replace this with a leather corkage, it would be definitely hurting their beliefs. So, and that led to the rise in mutiny in Vellore. And in 1824 also, so if we just observe that from 1805 itself, there was a rise in mutiny in one or the other part of the country, and that small mutiny led to a big mutiny in 1857. So these all were just acted as a precursor to, to this biggest revolt in 1857. So, and even in 1824, the sepoys of Barakpur refused to go to Burma, as crossing the sea meant a loss of caste. As I said before, like according to Hindu belief, like if they just cross the sea, it means that they have lost their caste, like they have just given up everything. So as a result, they didn't want their belief to get ruined, so they were not ready to cross the sea, and the regiment was disbanded and some leaders put to death. See how ruin, how like inhuman it is. The leaders were even put to death. So all these like were the reasons to this biggest revolt. And in 1856, the General Service Enlistment Act, as I just said, so it was just passed by the Canning government, which further angered the sepoys. Like it actually just angered the sepoys and future recruits as well. And it stated that all further recruits of Bengal Army would have to give an undertaking to serve anywhere their services might be required by the government. Like the Enlistment Act itself just says that the sepoys who will be recruited in the future, they have to be, ready to serve anywhere in the country, anywhere out of the country, if the government wants them to. So this actually disappointed them. Actually, it actually anger, like made them very angry. And it stated that like this was the scenario. And at the same time, as I said, and this was all the military reasons why this 1857 revolt had happened. And if you just see the next slide, that is, which says invincibility of the British shadow shattered. That means immediately before the revolt, the British suffered major losses, such as that like Afghan war and Punjab wars, Crimea wars, like this. Like of course the revolt had happened in 1857, but the thing is, before that itself, the British government was shattered in many ways. Like it had to face the Afghan war in 1838 to 42, and it has to face the Punjab wars in 1845 to 49, and it had to face Crimea war in 54 to 56. So all these events largely emboldened the spirits of the sepoy, and now they were just waiting for the event to trigger their anger, which was supplied by the greased cartridge event. This is important. Like already all these cause made the sepoys or the Hindu people or the people of India very much angry against British and their rules, but they were just waiting for some event to, to just trigger their anger. But suddenly what there was an event where they were just made compulsorily to use this greased cartridge rifles. That is, it is majorly called as greased cartridge event, and this particular event triggered the anger of sepoy and led to that particular biggest revolt in the Indian history. So there was an introduction of the Enfield rifles. That is important. That is Enfield rifle. This is a particular kind of rifle. So this enhanced the sepoy growing disaffection with the government. So it actually increased their anger, because the cartridge of the new rifle had to be bitten off before loading, and the grease was reportedly made of beef and pig fat. See, they just purposefully made them to, they just purposefully introduced these Enfield rifles to Indians, because of course according to Hindus, they can't, beef is a god, like beef is nothing but a meat of a cow. So cow is a kind of god for them, and for Muslims pig is like an animal, so like it's an enemy, so they can't have the pig fat. So in order to use this Enfield, they have to bite it. So the grease, the if you just bite it, the grease will be on their mouth, and that particular grease will have beef and then the pig fat. And administration did nothing to allow these fears, and the sepoy felt their religion was in the grave danger, and it was very much, they couldn't control their anger. They felt that it's completely against the religious belief. And there had been a very long history of revolts in British Indian Army, like in Bengal in 1764, Vellore in 1806, Bharatpur in 1825, during Afghan war in 38-42, to mention just a few. Like this was an Enfield rifles event, which actually triggered their anger. And if you just see the events that led up to the revolt, was like in the 19th, the native infantry at Bharmapur, which refused to use the newly introduced Enfield rifle and broke out in the mutiny in February 1857, was disbanded in the March 1857. Okay, it just started in the February. Like the 19th Native Infantry at Behrampur, they actually refused. They just said that we are not going to use your Enfield. As a result, they were just broke up the mutiny in February itself, and that particular mutiny was disbanded in March. In the next month itself, it was disbanded. Okay, and after that, a young sepoy of the 34th Native Infantry in, that is Mangal Pandey. You have heard about Mangal Pandey. He belongs to the 34th Native Infantry, and he went a step further and he fired the sergeant major of his unit at Barakpur. What he did was, they just, like they were just against using this Enfield rifle, and he just went a step forward and he just actually fired a sergeant major, okay, in his unit at Barakpur. And the who is that? It is Mangal Pandey, remember his name. And he was overpowered and executed on April 16th, while his regiment was disbanded in May. So, and his regiment was also disbanded, and on the 7th, the Awadh regiment was there. Awadh regiment, which defied its officers on May 3 and met with a similar fate. They also just met with a similar fate because nobody was ready to use that Enfield rifle. And the Great Revolt happened. See, on April 24th, 90 men of the 3rd Native Cavalry refused to accept the greased cartridges. On the May 9th, 85 of them were just dismissed, okay, and sentenced to 10 years of imprisonment and put in fetters. Like, see, they just refused it and they were just put into a jail for 10 years, and they were just sentenced, okay, and that particular, people were just dismissed. And this part of the general mutiny, okay, among the Indian soldiers stationed at Meerut. So all these news went to the soldiers who are there in Meerut, and it just triggered them. Why are they just, putting the, people of Indian army in jail for not doing anything wrong? So it actually triggered them, who were just the soldiers who were there in Meerut. And the very next day, on the 10th May, they released their imprisoned comrades and killed their officers and unfurled the banners of revolt. So what they did is, they just, in the very next morning, they just went there and they released all their soldiers and they just killed all the officers who were just looking after them, and they just, then the revolt just started, and they set off the Delhi after the sunset, and they just came to the Delhi after sunset, okay. And the revolt actually began at Meerut. See, the revolt started in Meerut. Like, of course, everywhere the Enfield rifle was refused, and they were just disbanded. Some were just, judges were, so some people were just sentenced to death, and some people were, imprisoned. But the actual mutiny or the revolt was not started, but the revolt started at the Meerut, where they just released them and then they just killed officers. And 58 kilometers, which is actually 58 kilometers from Delhi, on May 10th, 1857, and then gathering force rapidly soon embraced a vast area from the Punjab in the north and Narmada in the south to the Bihar in the east and Rajputana in the west. Like, that particular event just started spreading everywhere from north to south, east to west. So in Delhi, the local infantry joined them. So when they just came to Delhi, the local infantry which was there, they just joined them, and they just killed their own European officers, including Simon Fraser, the political agent, and they just seized the city, okay. They just came to the Delhi and they just seized the city. And then what happens is, the aged and the powerless Bahadur Shah, of course, in Mughal emperor, the last emperor was Bahadur Shah Zafar, and he was very much aged, he was old, he was powerless, and he was proclaimed as the emperor of India, because at that point they wanted to put someone as the emperor of India to represent India, who is not a British. So they just went to the Bahadur Shah, and they just, proclaimed he as the emperor of the India, and the long reign of Mughals had made them the traditional symbol of India's political unity, okay. And all the Indian chiefs who took part in the revolt hasn't to proclaim their loyalty to the Mughal emperor. Like, all the Indian chiefs who just took part, they accepted the loyalty, and they just, proclaimed their loyalty to the Mughal emperor, and they just proclaimed Bahadur Shah Zafar as their emperor of India. And on the 12th May 1857, Delhi was seized by rebelling sepoys after the overcame Lieutenant Welling Bey, the commanding officer at Delhi. the loss of Delhi was serious blow to the prestige of British India. Okay, this happened. And then the Bahadur Shah, after initial vacillation, wrote letter to all the chiefs and rulers. He wrote the letter to all the chiefs and rulers of India, urging them to organize a confederacy of Indian states to fight and replace the British regime. So, what this Bahadur Shah, was the Emperor of India, what he did was he wrote the letter to all the kings or the queens or the rulers of all the states and provinces, and he just told them to just fight and replace the British regime. We don't want their regime or the administration. Let's replace them. He just wrote a letter to them, and the entire Bengal army soon rose in revolt, which spread quickly. So the revolt actually just spreaded quickly, and Awadh, Rohilkhand, Doab, and Bundelkhand, and central India, large parts of Bihar and East Punjab shook of British authority. So this happened, and a revolt of the Sepoy was accompanied by a rebellion of civil population. Along with the Sepoy, the civil population was also participated, and particularly in the northwestern provinces of Awadh. So in the northwestern part of the Awadh, even the civilian people were also participated in this revolt, and their accumulation grievances found immediate expression, and they raised support to give vent to their opposition to the British rule. So most of the people just supported their anger against the British rule, and they were just eager to replace the British regime. So it is the widespread participation in the revolt by the peasantry. Of course, even the peasants were just participated, and the artisans and shopkeepers and day laborers, zamindars, religious mendicants, priests, and civil servants, which gave it a very real strength as well as the character of the popular revolt. It gave the very characteristics of a popular revolt, because each and every section of the community were just participating. Even the peasants, zamindars, and then civil servants, and all those people were participating in this particular revolt, and they were supporting the sepoys. And peasants and petty zamindars gave a free expression to their grievances by attacking the moneylenders. These peasants, no, they were just already fed up with these moneylenders. They just started attacking the moneylenders and zamindars, because they were just, you know, dumping a very high rent or the interest on the peasants. So they were just very angry with the moneylenders and zamindars. So they just felt that this is a very good opportunity for them to take a revenge against them. So they just start using this opportunity, and they attacked these zamindars, and that had displaced them from the land. Okay, and then they took the advantage of the revolt to destroy the moneylenders, and they just started destroying their account books and debt records, everything. And they also attacked the British established the law courts and revenue offices like tehsils and revenue records and police stations. So they just started attacking all the British offices, and they just started destroying all the records, because they were just that anger, and because they had that much angry on them. And at the same time, although the revolt spread to major parts of the North India, but practically India north of the Narmada remained undisturbed. Of course, the revolt spread into a major part of the India, but the Narmada, like the northern part of the Narmada, was just undisturbed. Like nobody participated from there, or the nothing like revolt or the any struggle happened up there in the north of the Narmada. And one important thing was the Hindu-Muslim unity. We can just see that was witnessed during the revolt. Like we, like Hindu and Muslim, we just showed their, you know, our unity for India. So that was very much reflecting. And if you just see the strong centers and leaders of the revolt, who are the major, what are the major like centers where the revolt just happened, or the struggle or the movement happened. And if you just look at the word, all the leaders who just stood up to the revolt were like at Delhi. If you just see, the nominal and symbolic leadership belonged to the Mughal emperor. Of course, like the leadership belonged to Mughal emperor, that is Bahadur Shah was the leader, but the real command lay with the corps of soldiers headed by General Bakht Khan. That means, of course, nominally Bahadur Shah was the leader, but it was because he was powerless and he was aged. The Bakht Khan was the one who led the movement, and who led the revolt of Bareilly troops. That is important. He led the Bareilly troops and brought them to Delhi. That is Bakht Khan in Delhi. So at Kanpur, what happened is Nana Sahib was there. At Kanpur, Nana Sahib was there. He adopted the son of the last Peshwa Bajirao II, and he was refused. He refused the title, the family title, and banished from Pune, and was living near Kanpur. And Nana Sahib expelled the English from Kanpur and proclaimed himself as Peshwa and acknowledged the Bahadur Shah as the Emperor of India and declared himself as the governor. That is Tantia Top. That is he just proclaimed himself as the governor and Bahadur Shah as the Emperor of India. So that is about Nana Sahib. And if we just see the uh, Begum Hazrat Mahal, who actually just took over the reins at the Lucknow. In Lucknow, there is a person called as Begum Hazrat Mahal, and where the rebellion broke out in the June 4, 1857, the popular sympathy was overwhelmingly in favor of the deposed Nawabs. And we just also see the leader, that is Jhansi, who was against the doctrine of lapse, rejecting the claim of Damodar Rao, because he was an adopted son of Rani and Gangadhar Rao. So she was against the doctrine of lapse, which actually, prohibits adopted son to claim the rule or the assets of the queen or a king. So in Bareilly, there was a Khan Bahadur Khan who actually just took over the revolt as a leader. And in Bihar, if we just look at Bihar, the revolt was led by Kunwar Singh. He is important, Kunwar Singh. So he was a zamindar of Jagdishpur, and Kunwar Singh is an old man in his 70s, and he nursed a grudge against British. He had a very much grudge against British, and who had deprived him of his estates, because they deprived him of his estates. And his unhesitatingly joined the Sipahi. He actually joined the Sipahi, and when they just reached Arha from the Dinapur. And we also have a leader called as Maulvi Ahmadullah of Faizabad, and was another outstanding leader of the revolt. And he was a native of Madras and had moved to Faizabad in the north, where he fought stiff battles against the British troops, and he emerged as one of the revolt's acknowledged leaders once it broke out in Awadh in May 1857. And other leaders were just Rani Lakshmi Bhai. She also emerged as a very good leader during the revolt time, because she was the one who assumed the leadership of the Sepoy at Jhansi. And Lord Dalhousie, the Governor General, had refused to allow that, because as I already said, Lord Dalhousie was the one who brought that policy of theory of doctrine of lapse. And he actually refused to allow her adopted son, to succeed to the throne after her husband Raja Rao died, and had annexed the state by application of the infamous doctrine of lapse. So that's why Rani Lakshmi Bai was against British, and she emerged as a very good leader. And she was joined by Tantia Top, a close associate of Nana Sahib. After the loss of Kanpur, Rani and Jhansi and Tantia Top marched towards Gwalior, where they were just hailed by the Indian soldiers. So this was the actual situation there. These were the videos, and these were the places in which revolt had happened. And let's see how the revolt was suppressed. Okay, so here the British captured the Delhi on September 20, 1857. Of course, this had started in the Feb only. Feb 1857 it started, and the May, like it was just May 10th, everywhere, like it was just a biggest storm there. So in September, these particular British were there. They just captured the Delhi in September 20, 1857. After a prolonged and bitter fighting, after a very long fighting, these Britishers were successful in capturing the Delhi. And Bahadur Shah was taken as a prisoner. Like Bahadur Shah was captured and he was kept in a prison. And the royal princes were captured and butchered on the spot and publicly shot at point blank range. Like they were just shot on public. All these royal prince were just shot on public, and the emperor was exiled to Rangoon. The emperor, like, he just exiled to Rangoon, where he died in 1862. And thus the great house of Mughals was finally and completely extinguished. So there come the end of the Mughal rule. Like it was completely extinguished, and with the fall of Delhi, the focal point of the revolt disappeared. So when the Delhi fall, so the main important or the focal point of the revolt actually got disappeared. So that is how it actually just suppressed. And okay, there is some glitch. Yeah, we can just, yeah. So at the same time, Nana Sahib was also, like defeated at Kanpur and escaped to Nepal in early 1857 itself, because the revolt came to an end and he just wanted to escape, because if he just caught in with the hands of the British, it would be a deathbed for him. So he just actually escaped to Nepal, and he just never to be heard of, never heard of him again after that. And his close estate like Tantia Tope escaped into the jungles of central India and was captured while asleep in April 1857, and he was also put to death. And the Rani Jhansi had died on the battlefield earlier in 1858 itself, and by 1859, and Kunwar Singh and the Bhakt Khan and Khan Bahadur Khan of Bareilly and Rao Sahib, brother of Nana Sahib, and Maulvi Ahmadullah were all dead, and while the Begum of Awadh was compelled to hide in Nepal. So all these leaders who took a very important role in the revolt of 1857, all were just dead, and a few were just escaped. And by the end of 1859, the British authority over the India was fully re-established again in 1859. All the British, like whatever the places that were occupied everywhere, again the British came to an authority again, and British authority was again re-established. Okay, and if we see the British officers who actually suppressed the revolt, that is in Delhi and Lucknow, there was this British officer called as Sir Colin Campbell. He was the one who suppressed the revolt in Delhi and Lucknow. And at Jhansi there was a Sir Hugh Ross, and at Banaras there was Colonel Neil, who actually suppressed the revolt. And if we just see the reasons for the failure of the revolt, like there would be a rise of the question, like this was a very big revolt where most of the people participated, then why does this revolt failed? Because the reasons are the limited territorial spread was one factor. That means we can just see the revolt only in some of the northern parts of India. But if you just see in the south, there was just no sound. If you just see the north of the Narmada itself, there was just no disturbance over there. So the spread of the revolt was very limited. That is, the limited territorial spread was one of the factor we can just see. And there was just no all India veneer about the revolt. Like there was just no all India participation was not there, and all India awareness about this particular revolt was not there. So that was the reason for the failure. If there was complete awareness, if there was a complete participation of the all people from all over the India, then definitely I think this particular revolt would have been one of the successful moment where we might have had got the independence then and there itself in 1857, if there was 100% participation of Indians from all over the India. So but this was not the case. There was limited participation, and at the same time the eastern and southern and the western parts of the India remained more or less unaffected. As I said before, like the eastern part and the southern part, even the western parts, they just remained undisturbed, and they were just less affected. Okay, and there was a certain classes and groups did not join, and in fact they worked against the revolt, like Scindia ruler and Gwalior. So they were just not, they did not join the group, and they were just started working against the revolt. They were just supporting the British itself. So that was one of the biggest reason. At the same time, big zamindars acted as breakwaters to the storm, like even Awadh Faisal Das backed off once promises of land restitutions were spelled out. That means even the big zamindars were there. They also supported the Britishers only. They were just not at the side of Indians. And the money lenders also and merchants suffered the wrath of the mutineers badly, and anyway saw their class interest better protected under the British patronage. Like even we just saw, like all those peasants, they just attacked the moneylenders and big zamindars. They just destroyed their account books, record books, because they had that much grudge on their moneylenders and zamindars. So these particular section of people, they did not support the revolt. Instead, they just went and asked the help of the Britishers, because they just felt that their interests are better protected under the British patronage. Okay, and this was the reason. And at the same time, the modern educated Indians and viewed this revolt as a backward looking, and mistakenly hoped the British would usher in an era of modernization. Like the modern Indians were there, like who are educated Indians were there, they had this misconception that British are the one who are working for the welfare of the India, who are working for modernizing the Indian people. They just had this misconception. So they also supported the British people only. They didn't support the Indian people. They just, in fact, they just, you know, they felt bad for British people, and they felt sympathy for the British people. In fact, they viewed Indians as, backward looking, like they're not understanding the like intention of the British. They were just in that kind of a conception. And at the same time, most of the Indian rulers refused to join and often gave active help to British. So most of the Indian rulers also, they gave the active help to the British people, and they did not support the people, like people of India. And yeah. So the Indian soldiers were poorly equipped. At the same time, we just see the soldiers, they were just poorly equipped. They didn't had any advanced equipments or the machineries, and materially fighting generally with swords and spears and very few guns and muskets. So this was actually a drawback. See, of course, Britishers were the one who had modern equipments, lots of rifles, guns, everything, but Indians were not well equipped with those machines or rifles. As a result, obviously the defeat will be with the one who do not have the advanced machines. And on the other hand, the European soldiers were equipped with the latest weapons of the war, like Enfield rifles, so they just won the game. And at the same time, the electric telegraph kept commander in chief informed about the movements of the strategy of the rebels. So whatever the strategy that the Indian people or the sepoys used to make, or the Indian rebels used to make, all these strategies were leaked through the telegraph system or the electrical telegraph system. So as a result, the commander of the Britishers, they were always kept informed about their movements, strategies, everything. As a result, the revolt was easily suppressed by the Britishers. And at the same time, the revolt was poorly organized with no coordination and central leadership. See, if we just look at the revolt, there was just no central leadership. Of course, there was just lots of groups, and each group had their own leaders, but there was no single central leadership or the very highlighting. There was just no single good, and the highlighting dominant leadership was not there. And there was just no coordination between different groups and different places of the India, and there was just no coordination. That was the major reason for the failure of the revolt. And at the same time, the principal rebel leaders like Nana Sahib, Tantia Tope, and Kunwar Singh Lakshmi they were no match to their British opponents in general shape. Like if we just look at all their leaders, they were just very good, but they didn't had good equipments or the coordination or the modern technology or the communication thing. So as a result, these particular, even though our leaders were good and honest and were well, but all these like other reasons made them, face the defeat. And at the same time, the mutineers did not lack a clear understanding of colonial rule, and nor did they have a forward looking program and a coherent ideology and political perspective and social alternative. Of course, our particular people, mutineers, they did not had a clear understanding of the colonial rule. They were just they didn't have the overall view of the tactics. How do we have to approach this particular situation? They did not had any clear idea. So that also became a very important reason for the failure of the revolt 1857. And the rebel represented diverse elements with the differing grievances and concepts of current politics. Of course, here the different rebels had different reasons. There was just no unity in their ideology, or that was the reason. And if we look at the consequences, like what was the impact or the consequences, like the direct responsibility for the administration of the country was assumed by the British Crown, and company rule was abolished. Like because of this particular event, the direct responsibility for the administration of the country was assumed by the British Crown, and company rule was abolished. So till date, the company was ruling the ruling India, and that particular administration was now transferred to the British Crown because of the misrule of the company. So the administration was transferred to the British Crown. So, and the assumption of the government of India by the sovereign of Great Britain was announced by the Lord Canning at Durbar at Allahabad in the Queen's Proclamation issued on November 1958. So the Queen Proclamation was announced, so that from now onwards the British India will be ruled by the British Crown directly, and the responsibility, administration, everything will be transferred to the British Crown, and the company rule will be abolished from now. That was announced through a Queen's proclamation. And after that, what happened was like. Mm, wait yeah, afterwards, like what happened is like the era of annexation and expansion ended, and the British promised to respect the dignity of the rights of the native princes. Like after that, this era of they just said that the annexation and expansion would end, and the British crown promised them to respect the dignity of the people of the India and the rights and native princes, and the Indian states were henceforth to recognize the paramountcy of British crown and were to be treated as parts of single charges. It was said like that in the Queen's proclamation. And at the same time, the army, which was at the forefront of the outbreak, was thoroughly recognized, and the British military policy came to be dominated by the idea of division and under counterpoise. Like now they started acquiring the different idea to deal with the Indian situation. They started divide and rule. They started dividing the India and started ruling the India parts by parts. So the 1857 revolt, however, sowed the seeds of the Indian nationalism. Of course, this particular event was not successful in getting justice to the Indian people, but it was successful in bringing the a feeling of nationalism among the Indians, and it was successful in uniting the Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus together. So, in other terms, of course, this Indian in revolt of 1857 was successful. We can just say that. However, it actually sowed the seed of Indian nationalism. It brought the feeling of patriotism. It brought the feeling of unity among the different class of people of India. So that's about 1857 revolt. So from, like, of course I can see that 1857, the revolt of 1857 revolt is very important in the history, in the modern history of India, because it was the one which acted as the initial point or the initial spur of the biggest fire. So I can just see that, of course, there were just also very small incident which acted as a precursor to the 1857 revolt, but this 1857 revolt acted as a very biggest precursor for the Indian independence in 1947. So that's all about 1857 revolt. So I feel like I think you all have got some insights about 1857 revolt. I'll be continuing my series. There will be just 20 to 21 series, and each series would have some 30 slides about everything from 1857 till to the 1947. I'll be covering everything from pin to pin, and I'll be seeing everything. Please do subscribe, share, and comment below. If anything have to be like required, is everything, you can just comment it below. I'll be definitely reading it and answering it for you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.